Story 1. Oh, absolutely. I am sure the best way to fix this is by doing exactly what I did last time that totally did not work. Great idea. Story 2. I have a horrible habit of sarcastically saying, "Do you think so?" after someone tells me something, and I never realized how condescending it sounds until someone pointed it out. Story 3. Police at a university hospital here. Most of my calls are to help calm patients and visitors who get loud with staff and make sure they are not making actual threats or anything that would be a criminal offense. Most times, it just involves hearing people out, giving them the number to patient services, everyone agreeing to relax and going our merry ways. One patient was particularly irate, and when I went to enter his room to speak with him, he yelled to the nurses, "You called the police on me?" I shot back, "Sir, I prefer bacon American. Please." He opened his mouth to retort, but then realized what I said and began laughing. Having a calm chat was fairly easy after that. Story 4. I was doing some work with my dad restoring something. He figured a metal object would help, so he said, "I know just what we need. What is something that isn't wood?" I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Wouldn't." Story 5. My first job at a restaurant, the hostess was being awful. At one point she said, "Listen, I'm not trying to be unkind." To which I replied, "I guess it just comes naturally." Story 6. I am a teacher. I told my students a few months ago that I had a planned upcoming absence. Seventh grader, "Are we going to have a substitute?" Me, "No, you should all just come into my room on your own, and you will each be given a book of matches to play with." Story 7. Not mine, but one I always quote because it is that iconic. Is it raining? No, it is National Baptism Day. Story 8. Not my reply, but one a girl gave to a friend. He was at the beach when a girl walked by, and he said to her, "I would love to get in your pants." She turned and said, "No, thanks. I already have one person in there." Story 9. A lady said to me, "You've got something on your arm there." And I looked, and it was a bright yellow spot. I told her, "Oh, I painted my bathroom this weekend and must have got some on me." She asked, "Oh, cool. What color did you paint it?" I looked her straight in the eye and said, "Purple." By the look on her face, she definitely realized that I was mocking her silly question. She is not colorblind. This was not a stranger, but someone I worked with for years. Story 10. You know that guy in the group who is a total pervert, drooling over every girl, and never being reciprocated? In my teenage friend group, which was mixed with an equal number of males and females, we had one of those, and unfortunately, he fixated on me. So at some point, he started going to an aerobics class to meet women, and bragged about how all the women in the class were interested in him. Every time we met, he would speak nonstop about how these women threw themselves at him, and he directed this talk at me, wanting to make me jealous, I guess. I've never been a confrontational person, so I mostly nodded and pretended to believe his stories about multiple women fighting over him. But one day he said, "Well, I have to go. I have a date with 5 beautiful women." And I don't know what came over me. I raised my right hand and started pointing at my fingers. "Oh yeah, Mary, Helen, Mildred, Susan, and Amelia." I immediately apologized, but he never forgave me for that. He went on to fake his own kidnapping and blame me for it, but that's a different story. Story 11. Someone was helping with my resume in university and suggested I switch the font to Comic Sans. I told him I was applying for work, not kindergarten. I didn't think it was that clever, but the group within earshot somehow did. Story 12. At a meeting with about 10 people seated around a table, we were brainstorming a problem. One person said, "I have an idea." After a moment of silence, I replied, "I bet it was lonely." Story 13. My girlfriend the other day texted me saying, "Wow, eating soup with a spoon is way better than a fork." I just texted her, "Wow, what a revelation." Story 14. So this is where you plug in the charger. Does it need to be charged? No, it has a mini nuclear reactor and does not need to be charged. The charging port is just for show. Story 15. Someone said to me, "You should smile. It takes fewer muscles to smile than to frown." I replied, My doctor said I need more exercise. Story 16. I sometimes reference the Muppets movie to my wife by saying, "Oh, may I?" when she tells me to do something. She wanted me to add that she always rolls her eyes when I do this. Story 17. Wow, those are certainly all words. I am proud of you. Maybe one day you will line them up into a coherent thought. Story 18. Maybe not exactly sarcastic, but I'll share anyway. Years ago, I was about 15 minutes late for work. I was coming in to drop my stuff off in the back room. My boss was posted up at the door, doing the classic tap the watch and asked, "What time is it?" I didn't even slow down, kept walking, locked eyes with him and said, "Time is relative. If I could answer that, I wouldn't be working here," and moved on past him. The issue was dropped real quick. Story 19. Sarcasm is like my second language, but unfortunately, my best replies are probably wasted on people who do not realize I am being sarcastic. Story 20. Working in a job with flexible hours, I turned up later than usual one morning. A colleague said, "What time do you call this?" I checked my watch and replied, "I make it you're not my boss o'clock." Story 21. In Catholic junior high, I answered, "Do you have enough for everyone?" with, "But that would be communism." They didn't see my comedic vision. Story 22. When I was working a retail job, a customer asked me a question. Cannot remember what it was. I replied, and they said that it was a stupid answer. I told them that it went with the question. They did not like it. My boss laughed. Story 23. No one person could be as uninformed as you. You must be two people. This was said to my high school history teacher. He was a large, foolish man who was only a teacher because that was the only way he could qualify to be the football coach. He literally spelled tobacco as tobacco. I was sent to the assistant principal's office. It was very clear he was trying not to laugh. Good times. Story 24. Not me, but my teacher. Back in my second year of high school, before every single student had a smartphone to take pictures, there was this other student in my class who did not pay attention at all. One day, our chemistry teacher had said at least 5 times that whatever he was writing on the blackboard was to be copied since it was for us to study for an upcoming exam. To no one's surprise, this student had been doing nothing at all, making noise, and then he dared to interrupt to ask, "Mr. Chemistry, do we have to copy?" To which he replied, "No, imbecile, you take the blackboard with you." Story 25. After I was first diagnosed with cancer, I had a doctor's appointment. Doctor, "Hey, how are you doing?" Me, "Besides the cancer, you mean?" I didn't plan on it. It just happened. Story 26. Boss, does everyone understand this new policy moving forward? Me, "This meeting could have been an email." Story 27. Lady, this cart doesn't work. Me, cart boy at the grocery store, so get another one. They have the locking wheels. They lock. People keep pushing them so they break. Story 28. I stopped at a store on the way to work and tested a fragrance. A few minutes later, I arrived at work, and my boss said, "Wow, did you bathe in cologne? You smell like a male escort." I replied, "Boss, how do you know what a male escort smells like?" Story 29. I had a very close friend who confessed her feelings for me after 7 years of being friends. I actually thought she was joking because our friendship involves a lot of playful teasing. I chuckled and said, "Yes, there is no way I can be attracted to you by looking at your face." Her reaction made me realize this was not a joking moment. Regardless, we are still friends and I continue to tease her about it even now. Story 30. Yes, of course. I will get right on that immediately, in a loud English butler-type accent, then ignoring them and going on with what I am doing. Works 90% of the time. Story 31. Most of my replies are pretty sarcastic. I try hard to keep it in check, but my mom and dad are both sarcastic people, so my sisters and I are all quite sarcastic. Story 32. I was a patrol supervisor in a small city. I heard an accident call go out at a big intersection on a main thoroughfare with 5 lanes of traffic. I was the first one to arrive, and it was an utter disaster. multiple vehicles, personal injuries, and all 5 lanes blocked. Thankfully, some medical personnel had already arrived and were tending to the injured as I started directing traffic. I had to turn traffic around because there was literally no way through, and traffic was heavy. Amidst this chaos, someone in a pickup pulled up near me as I was directing traffic in the middle of the road, trying to coordinate other officers to respond, dealing with bystanders, calling for tow trucks, and more medical personnel. I was overwhelmed with the situation. It looked as if he was going to try to drive through my scene. I told him he would have to turn around and find another route. He yelled, "I don't know another route." I replied, "Buy a map." I heard him mutter some kind of response, but he turned his vehicle around and drove away. Story 33. Okay. One time I was in the parking lot trying to remove my excess earwax with a golf pencil when I saw this guy Marty trying to carry a big sofa up the stairs all by himself. So I said to him, "Hey, do you want me to help you with that?" And Marty just rolled his eyes and said, "No, I want you to cut off my arms and legs with a chainsaw." So I did. Story 34. It was raining, and a lot of water was dripping into the house via the roof. My friend said very seriously, "That will be a leak in the roof." I replied, "Oh, thanks, Poro." This was about 15 years ago. He never spoke to me again. Story 35. This very pretentious woman, a mid-30s mom who is super strong in her convictions, told me, "I do not allow sarcasm in my house." And I replied, "I bet that is going well." Story 36. Often, when my wife or I unnecessarily announce some trivial event to the other like, "I am going to the bathroom," we default to this classic response from Hobson the Butler, played by Sir John Gielgud in the movie Arthur, "I will alert the media." Story 37. My wife asked our oldest son, who was 13 at the time, to please get her a glass of water. He said, "Okay," and went to the kitchen. We then heard him open the refrigerator, pull out the water filter, pour himself a glass of water, chug it, then set the glass and water filter on the counter and walk out of the kitchen and past us, back up the stairs. So I followed him and said, "Hey, bud, you forgetting something?" He said, "Oh, well, but I used up the last of the water in the water filter." So I said, "Do you need me to give you the recipe?" Story 38. Before every meeting, the meetings will continue until productivity improves. Similar to the more familiar, the beatings will continue until morale improves. Story 39. Trying to do Speaker's Corner in Ottawa in the early 2000s. I put a $2 coin in the machine and it didn't react. So I pushed the refund button and it continued not reacting. We called the security officer from the building out and explained our situation. He told us, "Well, the machine doesn't take $2 coins." I replied, "Yeah, it doesn't give them back either." He gave us $2 from his own pocket and told us to go away. Story 40. A group of people who thoroughly checked the definition of the word sarcasm before replying. Story 41. I used to tell my supervisor, "You are the boss," every now and then, and it would annoy him. He would always say something dismissive like, "That's right," or "Yes, I am." It was quite funny. Story 42. A coworker told me to close my legs as I was making the room smell bad. I told her, "You are just smelling your upper lip," and she cried. Our human resources is non-existent. Story 43. Customer. There is a problem at the end of this line. Me correct, sir. It is not at this end, sir. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Story 44. Whenever someone questions what I am telling them, I normally respond with, "No, I just thought I would make all that up and waste everyone's time." However, I always follow that up with a laugh and a wink to ensure they do not feel any aggression. Story 45. It wasn't exactly sarcasm, but one time I used my pseudo-boss's words against them. They were calling out my colleagues for a god-honest mistake without directly saying who did it, in a very obvious fashion since we knew who was scheduled at the time. I said that perhaps not saying it publicly would have been better. So they said if anyone has any concerns or complaints, please take them to the person directly and privately, after I said they weren't exactly being discreet about the situation. In which case, I promptly took their words and sent them back. At this time, I was a much less mature person. However, it was a matter of being in a low place mentally and then leadership wasn't handling things well, so they got the brunt of it. I'm sorry about it, but I think given the circumstances it was valid or it made sense, just not right to do to them. Story 46. A customer asked if we sell donuts. I worked at Dunkin' Donuts. I replied, "No, I don't think so. Ask again, never." Story 47. Oh, probably something like, "Wow, you must be exhausted from all that hard work." When someone was blatantly slacking, the look I got was priceless. Story 48. I was invited to a sort of ex-boyfriend's wedding. I queried why I was invited since we don't really stay in touch and I have made it clear that I don't really like him that much. He said, "Well, don't show up then. I thought it was only fair to show up to at least one of your weddings." Story 49. My coworker was in our work cafeteria when one of the cooks dropped a big pot of soup. It spilled and went everywhere. My coworker blurted out, "Damn, what are you doing?" To which the cook replied, "Minding my own business, what about you?" Story 50. At work at my grounds job at a country club. We are mulching the bushes and flower beds. One guy who believes he is a good groundskeeper is with us. I leave him and another seasonal worker to mulch one end of the bed while we do the other. I come over to check on him, and his mulch is thin with bare spots. I begin to instruct him on how to do it, and he says, "I know how to mulch." My response, "Oh, do you? That bare spot is fine, that thin spot is fine, that bare spot is fine. Oh, it's perfectly fine you didn't mulch the back of the bushes. This spot is fine. That spot is fine. This looks fantastic here," I say, pointing at a large area that is just bare dirt about 2 feet across. Story 51. The teacher was telling a long, boring lesson about the development of babies when he ended with, "And after 6 months, a major change in the life of a baby happens. Does anyone know what it is?" Without waiting a beat, I answered, "Their teeth are breaking through." Story 52. Really? It's a great way to get them to explain while you ignore them or completely laugh your head off over their absolute insanity. Story 53. Frenemy. It is good to see you again, buddy. My reply is, if you were on life support, I would unplug you to charge my phone. Story 54. I was in college, playing chess with a local resident who worked at Burger King. I said I had to leave to go study, and he was giving me a hard time. "Why would you go study? Studying is lame." I responded, "Mostly because I don't want to work at Burger King." He looked pretty hurt, and I still feel kind of bad about it. Story 55. I had just opened the bar for the afternoon when the first person through the door was an old woman delivering 2 phone books wrapped in a plastic bag. This probably happened in 2012 or so. Smartphones existed. I do not know what came over me. I was probably hungover. I cannot justify it, but for some reason, without thinking, I said to her, "Ah, yes, I would be happy to throw those out for you." She looked at me justifiably, as if I had just killed her dog. She simply turned and left. The one other person working looked at me and said, "What on earth, dude?" I do not know what came over me. I feel like quite a douchebag, as they say. Story 56. I fell off the counter at my job many years ago, without injuries. It was the only way to get something off the top of the cabinet. The other person in the room asked if I fell. No, Tinkerbell sprinkled me with pixie dust, and my happy thought didn't hold out. Story 57. It was to my buddy when we were drinking. I don't even remember what the question was specifically. It was something about how an upcoming event would go. I responded by pulling my pants down and saying, "Pull the crystal ball out of my backside and consult it." How should I know? Not to toot my own horn, but it was pretty funny. Story 58. My new supervisor was difficult to everyone, especially me, to the point that our manager had spoken to her about improving her behavior. So she started being excessively nice and was heading to the copy machine one day. She kept asking me loudly if I needed a copy of anything, even though I had said no. Finally, after she walked away for the last time, I said, "Yes, your death certificate." I can't believe how mean that was. Everyone laughed. I am so ashamed. Story 59. For note, There is an 18-year gap between me and my youngest cousin, Ella. At some family event when I was in college, my mom was updating me on the various family matters I had missed. You would not believe what Ella is saying these days. She was learning to talk. Why? Is she a liar? I have no idea why I said that. Even as the words were coming out, I started thinking, damn dude, why? Story 60. I thanked an instructor for telling me how much more knowledgeable they were than I was in the subject. Without context, it is fairly benign, but they nearly had a stroke. Story 61. This reminds me of something my friend said to me once. He was helping me work on my car. I needed to route the oxygen sensor wires from under the car up through the engine bay. I was lying underneath, trying desperately to poke it through a tight space while he was above waiting to grab it. I thought I was making progress. I asked, "Can you do anything with that?" He replied, "I could describe it to you. That is still the best response to anything I have ever heard." Story 62. My friend keeps asking me if his answer is right, and I reply, "If you don't want to use your little brain, just believe that it is right." Story 63. I was struggling with a bureaucrat to get an answer about a government worker category and kept getting the most roundabout 500-word answers. I finally said, "Is it a secret?" Story 64. Female thought I was staring at her. By the way, I was looking past her. "What are you looking at?" I focused on the yelling person and said, "Not much at all." Story 65. Oh my God, you're such a genius. I never thought to get under the ball like I've been doing for the past 10 practices. I don't know how I could have been so stupid as to not get under the ball. You're my hero. This is word for word what I said to a teammate on my volleyball team. Story 66. Then you probably should have gone shopping before Christmas Eve. Working at a world market, it was my last day. A woman came charging up to me with a little coin purse, yelling that she had to have 2 more for stocking stuffers for her daughters. I scanned it to check our supply. We didn't have enough. I told her we didn't. She then replied, "Well, what am I supposed to do?" That was my response. Story 67. I was talking to a bigot about representation in children's movies. They responded, "What about me? I don't feel represented." I replied, "You should." Disney came out with Country Bear Jamboree back in the 1970s. Story 68. I used the word snicker to describe something funny in an email. A colleague who was always trying to make himself look smarter than everybody else sent one back to the group saying, "I think you will find the word is snigger," to which I responded, "Snicker is to have a small laugh to yourself. Snigger is similar, except the laughter has a malicious edge to it." Followed immediately by a third email, much like I am doing just now. Story 69. I was in an Uber in Portland, a place where I have spent many years, and the male driver told me that Burnside separated north and south, and the river separated east and west. I was amazed and said, "Wow, I'd never heard that before." That is literally the first thing anyone ever tells you when you set foot in Portland. Story 70. So, I was stationed in Naples, Italy at a very small command for the United States Navy Seabees. I had arrived literally 2 or 3 days prior from the States. Food in Naples is phenomenal. The soil is full of ash from Vesuvius, and everything grown in the soil has this amazingly robust flavor. However, it took me a couple of days for my palate to reset and actually notice this. So, my command is having a meeting and we are dining at a restaurant in Vietri, and the food seems bland to me in a way because they do not add a lot of seasoning to such quality food. Another guy and I are chatting because he was also newly arrived, and he mentions his favorite pizza, a common staple of television advertisements. A spouse out to lunch with us and sitting nearby overhears us and turns to me, full of superiority, and asks, "Are you really talking about that pizza right now?" As if no sarcasm was intended, I turned to her and replied, "Yes, I am," to him. She did not speak to me for months. Story 71. One of my kids told me that his sibling took a bag of vegetable straws from the pantry without permission. Me. Should I call the police? Him. Yes. Story 72. Sarcasm is the best. Everybody in my family has it down to a science. I was there for this, thank God, but I cannot take credit for it. A guy gets in the elevator and says to the only other person in the elevator, enthusiastically, "Hey, I know you. I was in your class." The other guy, dry as a bone and as snotty as Charles from M*******H, replies, "We may have attended instruction together. I assure you we have never been in the same class. Let's go, dog. Let's go. I will never forget it." Mic drop. Story 73. I was standing by the entrance door when I was working at Home Depot, and a man walked in and asked if we sold nails. I said, "No, we don't sell nails here at Home Depot." He said, "Okay," nodded, and walked back out the door. Story 74. I had to reach out to someone who went by the king. Think like that episode of The Simpsons when Barney becomes the Plow King. So I called him up asking for His Royal Highness. They were not amused. Story 75. When someone asked me, "Is it raining?" while we were soaked, I said, "Nope, just testing my waterproof mascara." Story 76. This coworker came into my work area claiming to be a hardcore person. All I said was she's half right. Even human resources said I can't be punished for agreeing to a statement she made. Story 77. How I responded when my boss asked if I had time for another task. "Oh yes, because I completely have nothing else to do." Story 78. Me walking in with a fresh haircut. My coworker, "Did you get a haircut?" Me, grabbing my head. "No, wait. What happened?" Story 79. Back in grade school, a teacher asked, "Is that your lunchbox?" And I responded, "No, I stole it." She actually believed me and sent me to the guidance office. Story 80. I dish out a lot of sarcasm, so when you hit the double level of sarcasm with someone already expecting some, the look on their face just mirrors the state of total confusion and mental processing. Momentarily, it's pure bliss, I tell you. Story 81. Please pray that the dumbest person in the world does not die. I would feel terrible if you were to ascend the throne. Story 82. I'm ready to go to jail for mine. Yeah, because that is going to help your little Brady Bunch so much. Story 83. Yes, sir, I agree. It is somehow your neighbor's fault that the keyboard you bought, PlayStation 2, doesn't fit your laptop, Universal Serial Bus. Story 84. I have a full sarcastic mood I follow my whole day. I didn't realize how bad it is until someone told me that literally every word I say has at least 1 to 2 insults in a sarcastic way. The problem is that when I was using it, I thought it was like joking, but now I realize why I am somehow lonely in my small circle. Story 85. After meeting a girl who was clearly dating me to make her ex jealous, I replied with a text. "Sorry, I can't tonight. I am writing to my favorite laundry detergent manufacturer about why I love their product so much." 200-word limit. Story 86. Last week, I cursed out my supervisor. They told me they would have to write me up for it. I said, "Oh no, please don't. I'm so scared." Story 87. I stuck my finger in my mouth and then held it up in the air like an old-school cartoon when they checked the weather. My girlfriend asked me what time it was. I thought it was hilarious. She did not. I stand by it. Story 88. I know my hair is purple and there is a ring in my lip, but you are right, I do work here. This guy had come into the hardware store where I work. I greet him and ask if he wants help finding what he is after. He tells me he needs these specific screws, but he can find them. He knows where to go. He waves me off. I am a small woman, and the way I dress is not in line with the norm, so at first glance it seems like I am not the kind of person who would know anything about wood screws. It is sort of understandable. I live in a small town, I am emo, and I work in a hardware store. Older rural people are going to be older rural people. But you would think, since I am employed there and there are no other floor staff on at the moment, meaning that I am knowledgeable enough to be left alone, that I might possibly know what I am talking about. He had not come to the register for a while, longer than someone who knew exactly where what he wanted would take. So I go check on him and ask if he is having any trouble finding what he needs, and lo and behold, he is. He wanted me to find a small package, 10 or less, of number 8 5/8 inch wood screws with flat heads. since I literally spend 160 hours of my life there each month, and I had done that for 24 months. I know how the screws are organized, but people who only go to that section once every few months do not. So I reach up and grab this man a package of 10, number 8, 5/8 inch long, flat-headed wood screws. I find them very quickly because I work here. He says, "No, no, no, that is not it." He does not even look at what I am holding because I have a feminine appearance and look different. Plus, I found the item in 10 seconds, while he could not find it in 10 minutes. Obviously, I am stupid and wrong. He then proceeds to spend a few minutes looking for a package of these screws. He then hands me a package of 100 number 8 5/8 inch, flat-headed wood screws, and asks me if I have a smaller package. I show him the exact same package of screws that I have not put back on the shelf yet, because this is the correct product for this customer. He tries to say that he already told me that I was wrong and that these are the wrong screws. I take the package he is holding, the 100 pack. I tell him to look at the label on both packages. I read both labels out loud to him. Number 8, 5/8 inch long, flat-headed with screws. The only difference is the quantity of screws in the package. He hangs his head and says, "Oh, I am sorry. I should have listened to you. You are the staff." To which I replied with the above. Story 89. I used to work at a liquor store which had poor pay and no benefits. When any of my coworkers were doing simple tasks, like sweeping, mopping, or filling ice bags, I would walk up, pat them on the back, and say, "You are doing a really good job." Story 90. I was flying the plane from Texas to Louisville, and we were delayed due to a line of thunderstorms. A passenger came up to me to tell me his brother said the weather was good in Louisville, not understanding it wasn't teleportation. I said, "Oh good, let's go," to my first officer, and we went down the jet bridge and hung out in the plane, drinking a soda. Respect to my first officer for going along with the joke. Story 91. More reaction than reply. My mom got into quilting for a bit and had a rotary cutter. It is essentially a round razor blade. Anyway, I am about 5 years old and have my hand on the cutting mat, and my brother is jokingly pushing the rotary cutter closer and closer to me until he acceptably made contact. I looked down at the blood welling up from the wound, looked at my brother, and said, "Oh, thanks a lot, Aaron." 3 stitches later, I was fine. The family still laughs about it. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.